For more on that, let's turn to Dan Arbell. He's a scholar in residence at the Center for Israel Studies at American University and a 25-year veteran of the Israeli Foreign Service. Dan, welcome to the show. You know, they say it ain't over until it's over. A lot can still change in the next few days, but if he's ousted, Netanyahu will likely stay on as the head of the opposition. He is very popular, of course, amongst his Likud colleagues, but what of his future? What of his trials?
Well, this is really Netanyahu's scrambling now. He's got a day or two to try and prevent this from happening, but he's running out of options. And as you've said, it does look like it is going to happen. And once it does, he plans, or at least that's what it looks like, to head to the opposition and be chairman of the opposition. At the same time, it's not clear how his Likud colleagues in the ruling party or the former ruling party, how they would respond and whether they would move out to oust him or leave him in power as their leader for the coming years. So it's not clear. His trial continues. It's in its first initial stages. It's got a long way to go, many witnesses to hear. So that's not going to impede the trial. But right now, Netanyahu's future is unclear. He may be facing an ousting. He may head to the opposition. All options were still there.
The one thing that unites these so-called change parties is their aim of getting rid of Netanyahu. If they do that, or once they do that, what holds them together? Meaning, what sort of shelf life will this coalition have, or is another election on the horizon regardless?
So they're looking at the next few years as trying to sustain the status quo in many aspects and work on areas which they all agree on. Ending containing COVID, ending the economic crisis, focusing on easing tensions within Israeli society, bringing Israeli Jews and Arabs closer. These are goals that no matter if you're left and right, you can agree on. So they're going to focus on a very consensus agenda and not try and tackle difficult issues such as the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, state religious aspect, nor the Iran nuclear issue. I mean, there are some areas which there is wide disagreement among them, despite the disputes on in other fields.
This reminds me a bit of the Oslo Accords, where you had final status negotiations on the tricky subjects, but many would say those things are the pressing things that can't wait. Does that mean we shouldn't expect any significant changes in the policy that much of the world is looking at?
So I don't think that we'll see significant change in when it comes to foreign affairs and defense policy. And I think that, let's say, Hamas decides to provoke Israel, I think Israel is going to respond very forcefully, whether it's a Bennett government or a Netanyahu government. The same goes on the Iran nuclear issue. There is consensus that this new return to the JCPOA, return to the Iran nuclear deal should not take place. So they're agreed on that. What we should expect is a more focus on economic policy and social policy. There are many unemployed youngsters. There are many businesses which collapsed. I think that's going to be the focus. But as you've said, in the coming weeks or months, the world is not waiting for this government to agree on everything, and it will face very difficult challenges from the very start. And it remains to be seen whether, with such a narrow majority in the Knesset, with such a wide array across this political spectrum of actors, how this will actually function.
It has to be said that this coalition wouldn't be possible, quite remarkably, without the participation of the country's Arab parties, and notably Ram, which is essentially the local Islamist party. It is separate from the wing led in the north by the cleric Raed Salah, which is more aligned with Hamas, the militancy movement there. But how does this sit within the Zionist parties, the inclusion of a party headed by Mansour Abbas?
Well, this is unprecedented, but actually the person who paved the way for this to happen is Benjamin Netanyahu himself. Because right after the elections, he launched negotiations with the same Mr. Mansour and the Ram party, and he kind of paved the way for Bennett and Lapid to opt to go for this option. So it's never been tried before. It's not clear exactly whether Ram would be inside the coalition, outside, would abstain on certain issues, would support on some issues. The jury's still out on that, but it is the first kind experiment that we've never seen like before.
Dan Arbell, American University, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Have a good evening.